Welcome to Mom's Writers Club. Today, we are going to talk all about the different kinds of edits, which is something we've actually had requested a couple times. And now that Sarah and I have both been through all of the edits, we can talk about it and sound kind of like we know what we're talking about, which is always really good. Anyway, please give us a quick like and subscribe. It really helps us reach more viewers. I'm Jessica.
I am Sara.
Yes, whichever way you are right now.
I know we always get it wrong.
I know, that's okay. And yeah, let's get started. So the main four types of edits I think of are developmental, line edits, copy edits, and proofreads. And then there's a little more after that. But so when you go through the editing process, these are kind of the big things you'll do when you're being published. So let's start out by talking about the beginning, which is developmental edits.
Let me,
Sarah? Yeah.
If we're talking about if you have an agent and you have a book that the agent signed you and that's the book you're going to take out on sub, you do go through some degree of editing with your agent.
Yeah.
And that edit is actually kind of a combination of the three. Would you agree? Like, it's
I would
developmental.
agree.
There's also some line editing. They might flag like inconsistencies and small things,
I think it depends on the agent. So with my debut, Make Me Disappear, we definitely did a heavy developmental edit and then went on to do more of the specific line editing stuff because so much of my book changed. But yeah, I would agree. Like with the last one, it was definitely a mix of the three, fixing little errors, but also, this character arc doesn't make sense, or can we pull out this aspect more? So yeah, you'll definitely edit with your agent. More than likely, there are a few agents out there who are not terribly editorial, but that is pretty typical. And of course, this is all after you did your own self-editing and critique partners and beta readers. So it can be a long line. So this part that we're talking about now is really focused just on when you're working with an editor at a publisher, or I think most self-published authors also go through these steps to some degree. I'm not sure.
Oh yeah.
I've heard sometimes people will combine two of the steps, like they'll have an editor that will do, I don't know, developmental edits and line edits at the same time, but they also go in knowing there aren't going to be any huge developmental edits. So it varies a little bit, I think, depending on what kind of publishing you're going with. But in traditional publishing, this is typical. But we've had this topic requested a couple times, actually quite a while ago. And I was like, okay, we'll do it. We just have to both get through all of our edits first. So
right.
This has been a long time coming. Yeah.
We've been through the whole cycle. Yeah.
Okay. So what is developmental editing in your opinion, Sarah?
So in my opinion, developmental editing is working with the story. You are not editing the language, you are editing the story. And that means, does the story as a whole hang together? Are the beats in the right place? Or the points of conflict, or the points where the story turns? Are those kind of like more, are they there in the first place? And do they make sense? Are they kind of in the right place? Are there places where the story really lags or it's missing something? Do the character arcs make sense? Big picture stuff, not sentences, not commas.
Yeah, really focusing on like your story as a whole.
Chunks of stuff. Like, developmental editing is where you get an edit letter. It's not where you get, and they may put some markers or some comments in the text, but really like thinking about developmental editing, I think of it like a letter, like they're writing a letter about the big things about the book.
I totally agree. I just got my developmental edit on book 3, and I'm not going to go into detail, but it's an edit letter. I didn't get like a copy of my manuscript back marked up or anything. It's just looking at like the big picture stuff. So like my editor addresses the opening of my book and, says that she really likes it, but here's one thing that we could change to make it stronger. So that's changing like that first big chunk of like the first 10% of the book, looking at where the tension is coming from and potentially adjusting it, looking at the way different characters relate to each other and how much a character might be present in the book or not present, what the reader might think about a character, playing with things like that. But yeah, that's all developmental editing. And that's kind of where you don't want to look at the nitty gritty stuff because you might delete that chapter. You might delete that line. This is where they're saying like, don't, which you know what? I do it anyway. I totally do. If I see a misspelled word or where I
Or a
know
sentence that can be better. Yeah,
I
you
have
just can't
to.
help yourself.
But
And
yeah,
if this
and
is your
yeah.
and if this is the book that you got agented with, you've already been through this. You've polished the fuck out of that baby. And now you're back. Now you're going to like tear it apart, possibly. So
I will also say developmental edits tend to be the longest period of time that you have. Like at my publisher, it's you know, a month or two. I think at other publishers it's longer than that, but it's like
definitely longer with
and
mine.
some publishers will have you go through more than one round, from what I understand, of developmental edits. But that's that really big first round of like getting that story in such a way that it makes sense, which is always good.
Yeah. And pro tip, it's important not to be too precious about your book as a whole. But it's also important to know what can't be taken out, you know, to know what you're good, because you may, I mean, I think we've both been fortunate enough not to have much disagreement in our editorial process with our agents or with our editors. Would you agree?
I would agree. Yeah, there's one thing I'll bring up at a different point that was a disagreement, and I'll talk about how to handle that. But it's but it was not like,
remember what that is.
Yeah, oh, you remember it. It includes your favorite word.
It's important. I think it's important to, if you come across a thing in developmental edits, because developmental edits is where the story can really change. You know, line edits, copy edits, we're more talking about the language and you know, paragraphs and sentences. Developmental edits is where if there is some element of the story that you feel like is essential,
then argue for it. It's okay to disagree with your editor. This is your book. That said, think about it. This is going to be our pro tip number 2. When you get your developmental edit letter, read it, maybe read it again, print it off with extra spaces between everything, and then just let it simmer for a day or two in your mind. Do not have an initial reaction. Do not email back. Do not argue. Just think about it and think about what resonates with you. And then, and this is super important because there have been times where there have been misunderstandings. Get on a call with, whether it's your agent giving you edits or your editor or whoever, get on a call with them and talk it out and see what they actually mean. Because sometimes what they're getting at isn't what you think they're getting out in that email. And then also talk through potential solutions. And if there is a problem, if you're like, I can't do that, or I don't feel like that's what that character would do, or I'm not willing to change that, have that conversation, because it might be something where you can find an in-between you're both happy with. You might come up with a solution you're even happier with than the way it is now. And it's great to brainstorm with your agent, with your editor, with both. Like for me, all 3 of us get on a call, and it's great. We've come up with like the best solutions to problems because of that. So like right now I just got my edit letter today, and, you know, just emailed with like when I'm available. So we're going to talk in a couple of days, and I'm excited about that call because I know that I'll really understand even better what my editor's telling me can be improved in my book, and that then I will really be prepared to like go forward. And also try to keep your ego out of it, which can be so hard to do, but keep in mind, these people are trying to help you both make your book better and make your book more marketable. And I know marketability is like a bad word when we're like working on our art, but your publisher is still a company that needs to make money and make back that investment. So you need to find an in-between so that you can continue publishing.
And here's the cool thing is that by and large, editors and agents are creative people. My editor really thinks like a creative person. She may be an editor and not the author of the story, and I don't think she's an author at all, but her way of thinking about the story is so creative. Like it's so you know, if I were to have a disagreement with her, or if I were like, I'm not sure, I'm with you on what you're saying, you know, we could totally work together and come up with a different solution, you know. And I think by and large they're like that.
So I actually not that my editor isn't creative, but I actually think she's really good at looking at it a little more analytically versus creatively, which lets me be creative because she keeps me like hitting plot beats. And so I think mine might be a little less on the creative side, I think, from what I've seen, but it's helpful. But it also might be how she works with me based off of how I am. Like she might adjust that based off of her
Yeah.
various
I mean, I'm
authors.
sort of I'm sort of thinking specifically about like things that my editor saw in my story and,
Mm-hmm.
like themes and parts of the character arc and like really like she really got to know this character and really got her. And so when she had points where we had to change something, she was like, here's what we want to bring out in this part. Here we want to bring out this part of the character arc. Anyway, all this to say, if you have a disagreement, chances are extremely good that you can get together and come up with
Yeah.
something even better.
Yeah. Don't get mad if you
Yeah.
can help it. It's hard, I know, because it's your baby, but
Yeah, no, but seriously, like take that edit letter and just sit on it for a few days. It's a fine
yeah.
thing to do.
But
Yeah.
like, I love my edit letter.
Yeah.
I actually agree with her on all points. One of the things she brought up is actually something I knew was already a little bit of a problem, but I didn't have a solution to, and I couldn't figure it out. And she has a great idea to like
Yeah.
help me fix
Yeah.
that part of my book.
Like,
It's cool when you read it and you're like, wow, I can see what she means. I can't wait to do this to make my book
yeah, because
better.
it's going to be so good. I
Yeah.
know my book two is with my editor still, and I am really looking forward to developmental edits because I know something is wrong with the beginning.
Yeah.
I
You just don't
know
know what.
there's I know there's just some I know it needs work, and I just don't know what. I have
Yeah,
played with it so much, and I'm
you
really
really have.
looking forward to her fixing it. So
That said, it's a little scary to get your edit letter. At least I think it is. I see it
it
coming in, I'm like,
is.
ooh.
It is because they're
Or
like
like I knew today it was coming in and I was anxious all morning until it finally hit my inbox. And then I read it and I breathed. I was like,
you're
okay.
like, how much are they going to trash my perfect little baby?
That's not perfect at all and actually really needs help and maybe some CPR, but
Yeah.
okay. All right. Well, let's move on to line edits now.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Line
I think
edits.
I
Be
think
still
line
my
edits,
beating heart.
yeah, I think they
I
don't get
love
me
them.
started, Sarah. I think these might vary a little bit by editor, but the main
Hmm.
idea of line edits is that you are looking at the book on a line level. Now, that's not just like grammar necessarily. That might also be like, what does this character mean in this line of dialogue?
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
that might also fall. It's kind of like, you don't get a copy of your manuscript back marked up in developmental edits, but with line edits, you do. So sometimes it feels like there's, at least for me, a little bit of developmental editing happening at the line level.
Yeah.
But there's also stuff like, this is confusing. Can you rephrase this? It's
Right.
really looking at the book line by line and making it better. How would you
Right.
describe it?
Yeah, I agree. It can be as narrow as this sentence is clunky. It can be
Yeah.
as broad as this chapter is too long and this chunk of dialogue is way too long. Like it can be sort of at the chapter level even and everything in between.
I have actually cut chapters in line edits
Yeah.
once, I think. I
Yeah.
cut 2 chapters out of my last book, I think, in line edits.
And in line edits, I changed something about the story. I
Yeah.
changed not a big thing, but a piece of how the ending worked, which made it way better. So that was like a heavy chunk of editing of a few, like 3 or 4 paragraph chunks of the book.
I feel like
Um,
line edits are like a little loosey goosey in that they're supposed to be kind of more line by line, but we as the authors are like, I'm not quite done with this thing. I still need to fix, and you can do that in line edits, whereas
right,
you're really
right.
not supposed to after that.
So that's a good point, as is that in developmental edits and line edits, all the way through, really, like
Mhm.
you're going to be working with what your editor is telling you. But you're also going to be extrapolating from that some. You're going to be like, oh, but it also needs this, and I can change that. And in line edits, especially, like you're going to be
Yeah.
working with the feedback they give you, but you're also going to be looking at your book in a somewhat fresh way and be like, oh, no, and I also need to change this, and I also need to change that. And you're allowed to do that at that point in the game.
Yeah, I always try to do a full read through. I do that with developmental edits too, I guess. I do one full read through at the end. With line edits, I try to do a full read through as well. But at some point it gets really hard to do read throughs because you've read the book so many times and
Yeah.
you're like, am I actually helping myself? But
Yeah.
yeah. So
I
then
think line
after,
edits are so fun. I do. It gives me That's when I get to polish and tweak and just make the sentences so beautiful and satisfy my little heart.
I want beautiful sentences too. I just am usually like, do I have to read my book again?
I know.
It sounds bad. I do put serious effort into line edits, but
of course.
they also sometimes annoy me. And I don't usually have a call with my editor at line edits. I did with my last book just to clarify a couple of things, but I would say it's not typical necessarily, but it's nice when your editor is available to just, whenever you need them, answer questions.
Yeah.
So after line edits is copy edits, and this is typically not done by your editor. This is typically done by someone who is actually a copy editor, and copy editors are geniuses. Oh, I didn't find that meme. I'll have to find that
amazing.
meme. They are absolutely amazing. They will do things like, in my first book, I mentioned Voodoo Donuts, which is in Portland. And I think I called it, I like misspelled donuts based off the way like the actual business spells it. They have identified that I mentioned that there are 4 people in the room when actually there were 5. They have identified that like the sun wouldn't be rising at a certain time of day. That's like, all kinds of stuff.
It's amazing. It's like a magic
They're
trick.
geniuses.
Yeah.
I swear. Like,
I mean, my book had so many time inconsistencies.
I'm gonna try to find that meme.
Like if this happened at this point, and now it's nighttime, like that. There's too much time has elapsed, or not enough time has elapsed, or now it's morning, and it was just, incredible, like stuff I completely would have missed. Did miss, obviously.
Yeah. So you get your manuscript back and they've gone through it, and you'll see like they'll actually put changes in, and sometimes they will leave you comments explaining why. Mine usually do a little bit of like fixing grammar or commas as well, if anything's like really outstanding. One thing that and you can also say no. You can say no if you don't agree with something. For example, Make Me Disappear is based in the Seattle area, and here we don't say I'm going to Puget Sound. Like Puget Sound is like technically, I guess, like an area. So it'd be like, I don't even know, because that doesn't make any sense to me. We say I'm going to the Puget Sound, because we're actually literally walking down to the sound. We're not just like hanging out in the general area called Puget Sound. But technically, not putting the is correct. And I was like, nope, because that's not how anybody actually
that would sound messed up
says it here.
Very often my authorial voice is not grammatically correct. I have massive quantities of sentence fragments. I have lots of intentional repetition, so they'll catch that too. There's a lot of like, this is repeated. Is that intentional? And I'm like, yes, intentional. Yeah. So there's a little bit of back and forth there. Do you want this capitalized? In standard grammar, it is capitalized, but you might be like, nope, don't capitalize that. What else? Oh, they deal with like italics. Like, should this be in italics? Is this a text message, or is this whatever?
Mine also set like dialogue for when it goes to print. And it's weird because like my copy editor does it, but then my proofreader sometimes changes it. So I'm not really sure how all that works, but they actually do all the setting. They'll like put things in that you're not supposed to change. And it's like their copy editor code for like indenting the dialogue or putting it on a separate line or changing. There's a spot where like the font had to be changed for something, and they like changed it into that special font that I have no idea how to do.
Oh, and really there was cool. There was a whole thing. So in my book, there's a painting. And I think in sort of the standard rules, like the name of a painting or, a work of art is in italics. So the painting is called La Rosa Blanca, and it's almost a character in the book. And my character talks to it and lives with it and thinks about it as a person and calls it La Rosa. And we had this whole conversation about like what we should italicize, and so we decided to italicize when we used the full name of the painting and not italicize when we used the abbreviated name of the painting, which is more like a name of a character. It was just really interesting. Cool. So they pick up stuff like that. There was one other thing I was thinking of.
They also like keep track of all the names of characters and places, and you get, I don't remember what they call it. They email it to you with your copy edit. and it's just like a list of all
It's
that
like a
stuff.
style sheet. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a style sheet. And then like anything specific, like there's a word that is typically capitalized that I don't like capitalized in my book. So like that will be added to my style sheet so that they don't capitalize it when they do their edit. Because then I have to just change it back, which is just time consuming.
When we write a book and we go through multiple drafts and multiple kind of ideas about how the book works, this is me anyway, and like then we totally change the ending, then we take out a character, and you can wind up with all these fossils, all these like all these like
you forget to delete
remnants of the old book, and often your editor will catch that, your main editor, but your copy editor will definitely catch that. They'll be like, where did this character come from? They were not in the beginning of the book. And you'd be like, oops, that character came from a totally other story.
They're not supposed to be there. Okay, so anyway. I want to back up just a second. Yeah. There is a word called stet, and it's it stands for, stet is a Latin word meaning let it stand, used in proofreading to indicate that a previously marked change is to be ignored. And I actually did this in line edits, but I think it's also often done in copy edits and maybe even proofreading. It was asked that I consider removing all the F-bombs out of, if you've read it, Daniel's section of Make Me Disappear. So he's the sociopath boyfriend who's very controlling, and he says the F word a lot. And it was asked that I basically remove almost all of them, and there were over 100.
There were like 140.
And there were a lot. And I did remove a lot of them. I got it down to like 70 in the final draft. But for me, I was like, this is an integral part of this character. And saying damn or dang it is not the same thing.
I mean, like, they wanted to.
Yeah, this is like, and it was 2021, and it was just like, no. And I understood why, because it is offensive to some people, and I want to be sensitive to that. But at the same time, this is this character. I mean, my other character doesn't use the word at all. So for me, that was when I used stet, and I wasn't sure if I was using it right. I was like, do I just like write it out? Do I change it back and then add that as a comment? Like, I wasn't really sure, because like, when you used to mark it up with pen and paper, you would just write stet and like cross it out, I guess. But it's something to be aware of, because I didn't know you could do that. But you stet, S-T-E-T, and
you say nope, you keep your leave it as is.
And that's actually what I wrote for the Puget Sound thing, because let it stand, let it be the Puget Sound, because that's what people actually say.
And actually that brings up an interesting topic. You had a lot of F-bombs in your work. And your editor was like, this is going to offend some people. And so let's take all those F-bombs out. And here's the thing, like, your book is not for those people, you know? Like my book is full of the F-bomb. And so when you're using either challenging language or sex scenes or whatever, there may be points in the process where somebody asks you to take them out. And I guess that gets back to really thinking about what's essential to your book. Like, fuck was essential to Daniel. Daniel was not going to be Daniel without him saying fuck.
Not all 140 uses were essential, but about 70 totally were. Like, it would have totally changed the character. Yeah. And I also want to respect that, like, a book needs to be marketable to a big enough audience. But it's also okay to have a line where you kind of have to make a decision, and that's okay.
Where you're like, it's not the character anymore if we do whatever.
Yeah. I will also say, I don't know of any complaints we actually received. Like, there was just concern we'd get complaints. And it's totally possible they're there, because I don't look at my reviews on Amazon, but I haven't actually been notified of any, at least.
Yeah. I got turned down on sub once specifically for too many 4-letter words.
But can you, like, that book wouldn't have worked with that editor probably.
Exactly. And my book is not going to work for every reader,
Yeah, that's true.
But at least fuck is all over the first page. So like they know what they're they know what they're getting into.
Okay, so our last but then we have an asterisk at the end. Round of editing is your proofreads. And this is when a completely new person yet again reads your whole book and they kind of function as a second copy editor. I have had a proofreader catch a couple of things that a copy editor did not before, but also like any grammatical or like commas or periods or just anything that potentially was missed in any edit before. You really hope that proofreader catches it. And it's amazing how many things they catch, because you're like, how are there still this many misspelled words in this book that I've read 50 times? And you think that won't happen, but just you wait, it will. And you'll just be like, oh my gosh, how many am I missing? If the agent and the editor and the copy editor and now the proofreader and me a billion
all your
times,
beta readers, and
you still will have so many. I will also say at the copy edit and proofreading stage, you're not supposed to make big changes. Like at copy edits, I will make occasional, like I'll change a couple words, but like for proofreads, you're not supposed to be changing anything other than accepting or potentially not accepting proofread stuff. And actually for mine, I don't even make the changes in the document. If I make a change, I'm supposed to highlight it and explain why. Like you're not supposed to be making
at the proofreading stage for me, it was
you also might introduce errors if you make changes. That's the other concern.
In the proofreading stage, I was not making, it was not like a document with track changes. It was because they're getting into formatting at that point. They're starting to format the thing for publication. And if during proofreading you add 3 sentences, then that's going to change where everything on the whole rest of the book falls, and that's going to fuck with their formatting.
Okay, where were we? So after proofreads, you're kind of done, right? No, you're not done. You think you don't have to read that book again? You are wrong. Because they are going to send you final proofs, and you will either, well, I don't know what you get, Sarah. I get two. I get the digital one, and I get the one that's going to be printed. One is a PDF and one is like a Mobi file. I got one. Yeah. So you're supposed to read the whole book again and find anything they got wrong. So that, at least for me, is the version that goes up as my ARC, my early copy. So that's what's going to like be up on NetGalley. What's been done after proofreading. So it still has errors in it. And that's usually like what a printed ARC would be too. And then you get your proof, and that is when that's when it looks like a book. It's, all the formatting is there. The publisher's name is there. Your name is there. It looks very cool. If you've already done your like dedication and acknowledgements, it'll be included.
It's pretty fucking awesome.
Yeah, it's very cool, but it's also really scary because this is your last chance to fix stuff. So Sarah was going to talk a little bit about pro tip number 3.
Pro tip number 3, send that final proof copy to at least 2 or 3 good, close readers who have not read the book. And what I told my 3 was read the book, enjoy it, but keep an eye out for anything that might be wrong. So brand spanking new, fresh eyes.
Yeah. And you will be shocked, because keep in mind, you've been through like everybody at this point, and they will find at least 20 errors. I can almost guarantee it.
Mine didn't find that many.
We had like 15 or 20. It was a lot. And I had read the book so many times, but you get you need to read it too, but like by that time you're probably going to miss it. And there was like a formatting error in one spot where like there were too many lines, and you will find more errors, and that's totally normal. It's not that anybody didn't do their job.
And my sister, who was one of my final readers, found like a consistency error at proofreading.
Oh my gosh.
It was this point where the character doesn't have a phone and then has a phone.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing she found that.
And we had to change it. I mean, so fortunately I came up with a little fix that like didn't really add words. It was, we just tweaked a little bit. It was fortunately just a small tweak, but like, I was like, and then
I know
one of my readers, and we did not find as many like small errors, but one of my readers found a just wampin typo right in the beginning of a chapter. And I was like, I cannot believe nobody has seen this.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Astonishing. And I was
the other thing is I have had this happen once where my amazing proofreader accidentally, I don't even remember what he did, but he ended up introducing an error that then got caught in that final round of proofs.
Right.
And it was like a small mistake, but it hadn't been in previous versions. So it can happen. And I have a friend who, in her final proof, they like decided to change the font and like hit the wrong key, and it got published with an error in the back of it because of that, which was like a huge bummer. But okay, so we've like done all this, and you know what my favorite thing is to find an error in a published book. It's like an Easter egg, and it's not, I don't like email the author and say, oh my God, there's an error on page 80, I want a refund. I just think it's cool. I love it.
Human.
Especially like a big author. Like I remember finding an error in one of Charlene Harris's books. She's the woman that wrote the series that HBO picked up and turned into True Blood. She's written a ton of mystery series. She's an amazing writer, but I just remember finding an error and being like, I know a secret. It just made me happy. So anyway, but yeah, if you see an error in a book, the author probably already knows about it because someone's told them. Yeah, so those are the big stages of editing. If you have any questions about editing or those stages, just let us know. We are going to be recording more often. Knock on wood, fingers crossed. I feel like you just gave me a look. Did you just give me a look, Sarah?
No, I didn't give you a look.
Oh.
I don't give looks. I'm going to hear it from my mouth.
Okay. So anyway, thanks for joining us.
And you're nicer than me.
We were just talking about the difference between Gen X and millennials, but I have to tell you, so I was born in 83, and at some point I was considered Gen X, and then at some point I got shoved in with the millennials.
Yeah,
which I'm not mad about, but I grew up without a computer or phones until I was into my teens. Like I think we had our first internet connectivity when I was like 14 or 15. So I definitely did not grow up with that. And I didn't have a phone until I was 16, and it was my dad's old phone, and it didn't do jack shit. Like you certainly didn't have social media on it.
Yeah, but you're sort of on the cusp.
I know. Can I have my own generation designator, please? Something.
No, you can be one of us.
Anyway, thanks for joining us. We have our chats every other Wednesday night. You can find us over on Twitter, which is where the chats are. I am at author Jess Payne.
And I am at Sarah Reed Author.
We also occasionally do writing sprints. If you sign up for our newsletter, you will be notified when they are happening and get reminder emails for our Wednesday night Twitter chats. Shoot us a message at momswritersclub@gmail.com or find one of us on Twitter and send us a DM if you want to be included in the newsletter, if you want to be added to the Discord channel. All right, that's all we have for you today.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.